Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome back for yet again another review, of course, from the big weekend that just passed, Barbenheimer weekend, and of course today I will be talking about Oppenheimer, directed by none other than Christopher Nolan, starring Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Florence Pugh, and so many other people in this cast. I mean, this cast is nuts! If you thought Barbie was crazy of how many names are in it, this is like that film manifested tenfold. I mean, it's actually incredible how many people hop onto a Nolan film, because when Nolan calls, you go, you know? It's just one of those things, and I believe he actually is such a stand-up guy that he hand-delivers scripts to a lot of, like, these actors, and that to me really it shows class, just like the entirety of this film, which I will get into obviously, because I think you all know, yet again, same with Barbie, this is one of my most anticipated films of the year, even more so because Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. I think he's one of the greatest filmmakers of this era, and also I just think a conceptual genius from top to bottom. Whether I believe all his films work quite to that same level all the time, isn't always the case. But even so, he's always trying to do something interesting. Even like his last film, Tenet, which is so far up its own ass, he doesn't really care about explaining the mechanics of the film to the audience or giving us any semblance of story. I really think that there's still something to be said about how creative he's still being. And yeah, as I said, I do not like Tenet. I think it's his worst movie that I've seen. I still need to see Following and a couple of other things here or there. But I was really excited for Oppenheimer because this is the first time Nolan has taken on a project like this. You know, a biopic of a very famous world-renowned and also very controversial and complicated figure. Of course, being J. Robert Oppenheimer in this case. And I was really excited to see what he would do with a period drama like this, of such a massive, epic scope of 3 hours. And I'll tell you this, it is epic in so many ways, even though a lot of it is just people talking in rooms. Like, there isn't really a whole lot of action in this movie. And I'll be honest, the first time I saw it, I was falling asleep. And it wasn't really because of the film, I think. It was more so I had too much food. And I was trying to really kind of follow this movie on a very... I just was really not in the mood to watch it the first time around, but I went back again, thankfully, as of yesterday or so, and my goodness, what I can tell you about Oppenheimer, I think that this is by far Nolan's most mature and nuanced film to date. This is really a filmmaker who's been known for making high-concept movies and blockbusters, and this is certainly going to be a blockbuster, there's no doubt about it, but it feels like him taking that step into maturity that a lot of filmmakers... It's like when Steven Spielberg made Schindler's List. You know, it might not be his absolute best film, even though it's still a masterpiece. But it is certainly the one that elevated him more to just that type of fare that a lot of people kind of pigeonholed him into. And not that he was necessarily pigeonholed himself, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. And really, I mean, this film... it's also one of his best. I mean, this film is phenomenal. I think it goes without saying, one of the best movies of the year. If anyone is saying Barbie is better than Oppenheimer, what the hell? You're wrong about that. I mean, come on. You know, Oppenheimer blows Barbie out of the water in so many ways, especially from the screenplay department. My goodness, this script is almost airtight. How all the moving pieces of Oppenheimer's life, his political affiliations, how all of this ties into a very tightly woven narrative about and how these things come together at the end of the film is just absolutely incredible. There's so many moving plot threads throughout this entire movie, and you could say it's hard to follow specific ones at certain points, but especially going back and seeing it a second time, I got so much more clarity in knowing where the story was going, and my goodness, it does not disappoint. I really have to give Nolan a lot of credit here. And just what he has to say about J. Robert Oppenheimer, I think, is the most interesting part of the whole movie, because this is essentially a character study. When have we ever seen Nolan do one of those? When have we ever seen big Hollywood studios take on a character study? There hasn't been anything like this in years. And I'm so glad that Nolan was able to make this movie. Like, he's just one of those filmmakers that they give him all the money in the world to make what he wants, and this is the instance where it all pays off, I think. And of course, a lot of props has to be given, obviously, to the story, but since we are talking about J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who plays him, Cillian Murphy, and really his first leading role in a Christopher Nolan film, and probably his most important turn to date, is absolutely incredible. He could have made this a very easy portrayal, very Oscar-baity portrayal, right, of this, you know, figure that we know. I mean, we've seen this many times before with Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill, for instance, but really here, I think what Cillian Murphy does that's so impressive is just how much he internalizes everything that's going on around him. It's a very emotive performance through the eyes, which I think really he gives insight to his mindset and what is going through his mind at all times, what he's feeling about these specific instances. I think it's just so compelling, his portrayal, and I just think one of the best performances of the year. He's definitely going to get nominated for Best Actor, and I think if Cillian Murphy wasn't as good as is anchored into this material as he is here, I don't think this movie would have worked, to be quite honest. And just his face is so, once again, it's so expressive, and I think that also plays a lot into the close-ups that Nolan films of him. And my goodness, I mean, this is one of his best directed films. I wouldn't be surprised if Christopher Nolan finally gets that Oscar for Best Director, and if he finally got that Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay, because once again, the dialogue is so snappy and so witty, as you'd expect from a Christopher Nolan film, and yet he's getting across so much information. And this film is 3 hours, and the first time I might have felt the length, but I did not feel it the second time. It just kind of, well, okay, maybe like a little bit, but I'll get into that later. But for the most part, it just kind of flies by because you're so engrossed in the political intrigue, everything that's going on in Oppenheimer's life. And I really love how his involvement in the Manhattan Project really put a burden on so many of his relationships in his life. And you see this take a toll on him personally and career-wise throughout this entire film, and also how his initial intentions for this scientific discovery were kind of mutated by the government. It really is just he's such a tragic figure in history, but one that I still think is so worthy of not only praise but also dissection, you could say, because there's so much to take in. He was such a complex man, and this film really lets you sink into who Robert J. Oppenheimer is as a character. But my goodness, talk about the other characters and historical figures in this movie. This cast is stellar. Everybody is firing off, and there are so many huge, big-name actors, even Academy Award-winning actors, who show up for just a few scenes, and they are hardly in the movie, and yet everyone is still so great. They give their all to even the small scenes that they are in, and it's just amazing how he uses and how he doesn't use some of these people to the extent of others. But really, I have to mention a lot of the standouts. Matt Damon is even better in this than he was in Air, and I think the banter between him and Cillian Murphy is really, really funny and clever, and I think you really understand the dynamic they have, and almost the respect they have for each other as colleagues working on this project. And of course, I have to mention Emily Blunt as his wife Kitty, who I think is really, really great in this. At first, obviously, Nolan has had a lot of criticism thrown at him for his portrayal of female characters, and I wasn't sure the first time I saw it, but once I came back and watched this movie, I understood her purpose in this film, and what she means in her relationship to Oppenheimer in this, and I just think it's absolutely amazing some of the work she puts in, some of the most emotive she's done to date, though I do feel like they could have dived a bit deeper with her character, and because there's some things they insinuate but they don't fully develop, and I would have loved to seen that fleshed out just a little bit more, but she's really great in this. Of course, Florence Pugh, obviously great and everything. And what do I really need to say about her? Though I feel like I wish there was... I don't know if I wish there was more of her character, but she plays a very, very interesting role in the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer. And I could go on and on about this cast. Josh Hartnett is really good. Benny Safdie in this keeps proving how tremendous of not only a director he is, but even more so an actor, I think. And just his portrayal as Teller in here, just the accent that he has, it is so spot on. This man does not miss in any of his performances, and I'm glad he's been putting a lot of great work in. This year's, in addition to Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, this man's really been putting in some phenomenal acting work as of late. And also, I gotta mention David Krumholtz, who I didn't even realize, was Bernard in the Santa Claus. I'm like, what? He's in this movie? I could hardly recognize him, and I didn't put the two and two together, but he's really great as one of Oppenheimer's closest compadres, you could say. And yeah, everyone has something to do in this movie, but I think really the other big standout in this film is Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss, who really plays an integral part in the legacy of Oppenheimer. And my goodness, I have not seen Robert Downey Jr. this good in forever. I mean, give this man an Oscar nomination right now. I think this is one of his best performances. I really think that... I think he plays such a pivotal role in this film, and he must be commended for all the amazing work that he does. And he gets a few scenes to really chew it up in this film. I would not be surprised if he gets the Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor come this next Academy Awards season, because really he deserves it, along with Cillian Murphy. I think definitely the two standout performances from this movie. And I think what Nolan has to say about these events and how he handles this is really, really interesting, especially in the way that the scientists feel like all this work that they've put into years of research in physics would essentially be reduced to a weapon of mass destruction. I think that conflict is felt throughout this entire film, and also I have to talk about the way this film is structured, which a lot of people have compared to Oliver Stone's JFK, and I think that's a very apt comparison, though I think this is better than JFK, if I'm being honest, and that is a great film. But I think the way he edits this all together, this is some of the, well, not him obviously, I forgot the editor's name, but she really is phenomenal, and I think the way that this film is really cut together, I think this is some of the best editing I've seen all year, and I think the way Nolan uses insert shots and the way it's so brilliantly paced within the film, I think is incredible, and how he uses either flashbacks or events that we haven't really seen yet that will later be recontextualized in a new way is so beyond brilliant. And what Nolan insinuates about these events is insanely intriguing, because obviously I don't think this film gives any easy answer on how to feel about Oppenheimer. I think it's very nuanced in that sense, something that Barbie isn't, and I think, because I think how I fall on this, I think Oppenheimer, he wanted to be a martyr, but at the same time he still built this weapon that basically created a cataclysmic effect on the entire fabric of our society, and that has to be addressed for sure, and that is addressed throughout this entire movie. But as I said, the toll that it takes on him is definitely present, and I don't think that Nolan shies away from that. And I think it's very clear how Nolan feels about Oppenheimer, and it's so interesting at the same time, because it's like some of the history here, I don't know if he takes a liberty with, but as I said, he kind of gives his own perspective on it in ways that isn't necessarily heavy-handed. Like, some things I even missed going to the theater, but I was really like, wow, that's really interesting if he's taking that view on this event. And there could be a wiggle room in between to believe, what he's saying, or to not believe it. There's always room for debate, for sure. But I think what he has to say about this is just incredible. And just, of course, the build-up to, creating the bomb. Like, how much tension Nolan is able to get out of just plain old dialogue. Well, obviously not plain old dialogue. I already talked about how exceptional it is. But I think that says a lot to him in his prowess as a director and a filmmaker, because it is really hard to pace a 3-hour movie in such a way that it truly is, it truly feels like a thoroughly engaging experience throughout the entire runtime for the most part. And I think what he does in that sense is just incredible. And of course, you got to talk about the visual effects, because he said he practically recreated the atomic bomb explosion. And my goodness, that scene is just glorious. And yet again, the score from Ludwig Göransson, which I think will get an Academy Award nomination, just absolutely amps up the tension even more, especially in that scene. So beautiful and so haunting at the same time. And the sound, of course, is also really great for the most part, especially when it comes to the explosions and all the different things that they're, putting together in this film. It really does feel like an assault on the senses in a lot of ways. And I think just from a sound design standpoint, it is great. Though I will say, one of my problems with this movie, and I didn't have this issue as much as some other people, but of course, this has been something that's been going on in Christopher Nolan's past few films, but the mixing for the dialogue, I think the voices are mixed too low at sometimes. I could understand for the most part what they were saying, but in some really important scenes, you miss a little bit of what they're saying because the other sounds are so overwhelming, or the score, and I just think the voices could have been mixed a bit higher, the dialogue that is, and I think it would have made it just that much better. And there is one part of the movie where I think the film kind of dips. It gets a little like, okay, like, let's get to this point, let's build this in a very kind of like simple way that we've seen other biopics do before, and it's just also just kind of uninteresting, and I think you could have cut out like a good 5 minutes on this movie. If you ask me, because the first time I went to the bathroom, and then when I watched it all the way through the second time, I didn't feel like I missed anything at all. I was honestly like, wait, did I walk out and miss this? So I really think that there's a few moments like that where I wasn't as fully invested, but once you get to, that bomb explosion, I think the film goes right back up the mountain, and there's one scene in this movie that I think a lot of people have been saying is the most brilliant sequence Christopher Nolan has ever filmed. And I think it's right up there. I'm not going to say it's his best, but it is by far the most moving thing that Nolan has ever put in any of his movies. And I was honestly on the verge of tearing up. So I think that says a lot to how emotionally potent this story is, even though it's this historical drama with the costumes, with everything you'd expect. The fact that it is a deep-rooted character study about a very complex historical figure is what makes Oppenheimer his most fruitful effort in that sense, where I think Nolan can truly be seen by many to be a more I guess intellectual auteur. And not that I've never said that he wasn't, but I feel like some people might not believe that he had this in him, but he showed us that yes, he does. And look, is this going to win Best Picture, or is this a front runner for Best Picture? Honestly, I think it probably is. I mean, of course we have to see Killers of the Flower Moon, but Martin Scorsese, obviously one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, he's already got his roses They gave him the Oscar for Departed, and that's not even his best movie. It's one of his best, sure, but I think that this could be the same thing for Nolan, because I think this is even better than something like The Departed, you know, and I think that this is about time that the Academy recognize how brilliant of a filmmaker that he is, and that he has been for so long. It astounds me that he's only had one Best Director nomination to his name yet, and not a single Oscar win, especially after snubbing such a monumental film like The Dark Knight. It's hard to believe that Nolan hasn't been taken as seriously in that regard, but I think this movie in Oppenheimer is going to be the one to do it. I think this film is absolutely incredible. A few minor issues aside when it comes to a bit of the pacing, when it comes to some of the mixing, when it comes to a bit of some of the more involved character moments. It's going to be hard-pressed to find many better movies this year. This is going to go all the way to the end. I think this is a huge deal. I think this is just such a monumental achievement in so many ways. And yeah, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I mean, I absolutely love this film. Honestly, this is probably my third favorite Christopher Nolan film of all time, after the first two Dark Knight films, which I think are just masterpieces. And this comes pretty close. I'm going to be honest. I could understand anyone saying that it's at least his second best movie, but definitely not better than The Dark Knight. No way. But yeah, guys, let me know what you thought about Oppenheimer in the comments below. Really want to discuss this film because I just think it's absolutely tremendous in every single way, and I'm so glad that I went back and saw this and again in theaters, in IMAX, that is. You know, you don't have to necessarily see it in IMAX, but I think especially with the sound design, you want to experience it in the biggest theater possible with the most elaborate sound system that you could find. And of course, smash the like button if you like what I'm doing here. If you like the reviews I've put out so far for Barbenheimer weekend, let me know what you think about the two of those. And of course, you know, so much great content coming down the line very soon. I'm working on some videos, and so, you know, you don't want to miss them. I won't say too much because I still have a bit of planning to do with them. But regardless, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take it easy now.